The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty Afghan village as Sergeant Maria Rodriguez checked her gear one final time. Her M4 carbine felt familiar in her hands, though she noticed a slight looseness in the stock that hadn't been there the day before. The weapon had been her constant companion through 18 months of deployment, and like an old friend, she knew its every quirk and flaw. Maria had grown up in a small Texas town where her father taught her to shoot before she could properly tie her shoes. The military seemed like a natural path, especially when college funds ran dry and her younger brother needed medical care their family couldn't afford. What started as a practical decision had become a calling she never expected. The intelligence briefing that morning painted a grim picture. Enemy forces had been moving supplies through the mountain passes, using civilian convoys as cover. Her unit's mission was to establish observation posts along the suspected route and gather intelligence. It was supposed to be a quiet surveillance operation, the kind that had become routine over the past few months. Maria's squad consisted of 5 soldiers, each handpicked for their skills and experience. There was Thompson, the communications specialist, who could make contact with base camp from the middle of nowhere. Jenkins handled the heavy weapons, his steady hands never wavering even under pressure. Rodriguez managed explosives and demolition, his quick thinking having saved them more than once. Finally, there was Martinez, their medic, whose calm presence had pulled them through countless dangerous situations. As they moved through the village, Maria noticed the unusual quiet. Normally, children would be playing in the dusty streets while vendors hawked their wares. Today, the windows were shuttered and the streets empty. Her instincts, honed through months of combat experience, told her something was wrong. She signaled her concerns to the squad leader, but orders were orders and they continued toward their assigned position. The climb to the observation post took them through rocky terrain that provided excellent cover, but made movement slow and difficult. Maria's rifle caught on a jutting rock, and she heard a distinct crack from the stock. When she examined the weapon, her heart sank. The internal mechanism had been damaged, and while the rifle still functioned, it was clearly compromised. In a perfect world, she would have returned to base for a replacement, but their mission timeline was tight, and turning back would mean losing valuable intelligence-gathering opportunities. She made a quick field assessment of the damage. The firing mechanism still worked, but the stock was loose and would affect accuracy significantly. The rifle could still fire, but hitting targets at distance would be nearly impossible. For a sniper-qualified soldier whose specialty was precision shooting, this was like a pianist trying to perform with broken fingers. Maria decided to keep the problem to herself for now. The mission was important and her squad was counting on her. She had backup weapons and could adapt. Her training had taught her to overcome obstacles, and a damaged rifle was just another challenge to face. She secured the weapon as best she could and continued the climb. The observation post overlooked a narrow valley where the suspected convoy route passed. From their elevated position, they could see for miles in both directions. It was the perfect spot for surveillance with multiple escape routes and excellent concealment. The squad settled in for what they expected to be a long wait. As the hours passed, Maria found herself thinking about home. Her brother's surgery had been successful, and he was back in school, dreaming of becoming a doctor himself. Her parents had been worried about her deployment, but they understood her sense of duty. She carried their letters in her pack, reading them whenever the stress became overwhelming. The radio crackled to life around midday. Intelligence reports indicated the convoy they were watching for had left its staging area and was heading their way. The timeline had moved up significantly, and they needed to be ready. Maria checked her damaged rifle again, making minor adjustments to compensate for the loose stock. She knew she would have to get much closer to any target to ensure accuracy. Thompson established communication with headquarters and confirmed their position. The rest of the squad prepared their equipment and settled into defensive positions. They were no longer just observers. If the situation escalated, they would need to be ready to fight. As afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Martinez spotted movement in the distance. Through binoculars, they could see a convoy of vehicles approaching along the expected route. But something was wrong with the intelligence they had received. This wasn't a small supply run or a civilian convoy being used for cover. This was a major military movement with armored vehicles and what appeared to be significant personnel. Maria studied the approaching force through her scope, compensating mentally for her rifle's damaged condition. The convoy was larger than anything they had been briefed about, and it was clear they were witnessing something much more significant than a routine supply run. The lead vehicles were moving with military precision, and she could see armed personnel manning mounted weapons. The squad leader made a quick decision. They would maintain their position and gather as much intelligence as possible, but they were no longer in a simple observation mission. If discovered, they would be vastly outnumbered and outgunned. The damaged rifle in Maria's hand suddenly felt like a much more serious problem. As the convoy drew closer, Maria could see details that made her blood run cold. These weren't just supply trucks or routine patrols. The vehicles carried equipment she recognized as preparation for a major offensive operation. Whatever intelligence had led to their mission had been incomplete, and they had stumbled into something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. Her squad's observations could provide crucial intelligence that might save countless lives, but they needed to survive long enough to report what they were seeing. With her rifle compromised, and the enemy force growing larger by the minute, Maria knew the next few hours would test everything she had learned as a soldier. The convoy continued its approach, and Maria prepared herself for whatever was coming. Her broken rifle might not be perfect, but her training, experience, and determination remained intact. Sometimes, she thought, the most important battles were won not with perfect equipment, but with the courage to do what was necessary when everything seemed to be falling apart. The convoy moved like a steel serpent through the mountain pass, its vehicles kicking up clouds of dust that made accurate counting difficult. Maria pressed her eye to the scope of her damaged rifle, trying to get a clear assessment of what they were facing. Through the haze, she could make out at least 15 vehicles, including several that looked like mobile command units and what appeared to be heavy weapons platforms. Thompson was busy on the radio, trying to establish contact with headquarters to report their findings. The mountains interfered with communications, and he was having difficulty getting a clear signal. Static filled their headsets as he adjusted frequencies and tried different antenna positions. Time was running out, and they needed to get this intelligence back to command before the convoy reached its destination. Jenkins had positioned his machine gun to cover the most likely approach routes to their position. His training as a heavy weapons specialist had taught him to think defensively, and he was already calculating fields of fire and potential fallback positions. The rocky terrain provided good cover, but it also limited their mobility if they needed to retreat quickly. Rodriguez was checking his demolition equipment, counting charges and calculating blast patterns. If the situation deteriorated, his explosives could buy them time to escape or potentially disrupt the enemy convoy. He worked quietly but efficiently, his movements precise and economical. Years of handling dangerous materials had taught him that careful preparation could mean the difference between success and disaster. Martinez kept watch on their perimeter, while monitoring the squad's physical condition. The stress of the situation was beginning to show on everyone's faces, but training and discipline kept them focused. He checked his medical supplies and positioned himself where he could quickly reach any wounded team member if the situation turned violent. Maria continued her surveillance through the damaged scope, fighting against the rifle's instability to maintain a clear picture of the convoy. She had identified what appeared to be a command vehicle near the center of the formation, distinguished by its additional communication equipment and the way other vehicles seemed to maintain formation around it. If the situation required action, that would be the highest value target. The convoy had stopped approximately 800 meters away, well within rifle range under normal circumstances. But with her weapon compromised, Maria knew that distance presented a serious challenge. She could still make the shot, but her margin of error had shrunk dramatically. Every variable, from wind speed to target movement, would need to be perfectly calculated. Through her scope, she watched as personnel dismounted from several vehicles. They moved with military precision, establishing a perimeter and setting up what looked like communications equipment. This wasn't a brief rest stop. They were establishing some kind of temporary command post. The intelligence value of what they were witnessing continued to grow. Thompson finally managed to establish communication with headquarters, but the connection was weak and intermittent. He began transmitting their observations in coded bursts, hoping that enough information would get through to alert command to the situation. The convoy's size and apparent mission represented a significant threat that needed immediate attention. Maria watched as more personnel emerged from the vehicles. She counted at least 40 combatants, all well-armed and moving with the confidence of experienced soldiers. Whatever operation they were planning, it involved significant resources and careful preparation. Her squad of 5 was vastly outnumbered and would need every advantage to survive if they were discovered. The wind picked up, carrying dust and debris across their position. Maria had to adjust her position to maintain clear observation while staying concealed. The damaged rifle stock made it difficult to hold steady aim, and she found herself compensating constantly for the weapon's instability. Every movement risked compromising their position, but the intelligence they were gathering was too valuable to abandon. As the afternoon progressed, the enemy activity below intensified. Maps were spread on vehicle hoods and what appeared to be planning sessions were taking place among the leadership. Maria could see animated discussions and pointing toward various directions, suggesting they were coordinating movement toward multiple objectives. Jenkins noticed movement on the ridgeline to their east. Small teams of enemy personnel were being deployed to establish observation posts of their own. The net was beginning to close around potential escape routes, and it was becoming clear that this was more than a routine stop. The enemy was establishing a temporary operations center and securing the area. Rodriguez whispered urgently into his headset, reporting the new deployments to the rest of the squad. Their situation was becoming increasingly precarious as enemy forces spread out to cover more territory. What had started as a surveillance mission was rapidly evolving into a potential combat situation with overwhelming odds. Martinez spotted additional movement to the south, confirming that they were being surrounded. The enemy wasn't aware of their specific location yet, but the expanding perimeter would eventually include their observation post. They needed to make a decision soon about whether to attempt escape or continue gathering intelligence. Thompson's radio crackled with an incoming transmission from headquarters. The message was fragmentary due to poor reception, but the essential content was clear. The convoy represented a major threat to coalition forces in the region. Any intelligence they could provide was crucial, but their safety was also a priority. The decision about what to do next was left to the squad leader. Maria continued monitoring the command vehicle, noting the arrival of what appeared to be senior leadership. The person emerging from the vehicle carried himself with the authority of high rank, and other personnel immediately gathered around him for briefings. This was clearly a significant operation, and they were witnessing the final coordination phase. The damaged rifle felt increasingly inadequate as the tactical situation developed. Maria knew that if action became necessary, she would need to be much closer to her target than her training normally required. The weapon's compromised accuracy meant that the careful, long-range precision she had trained for would be impossible. As shadows began to lengthen across the valley, the enemy's preparations seemed to be reaching completion. Vehicles were being repositioned and personnel were loading equipment with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed plan. Whatever operation was about to unfold, it would happen soon. The squad leader made the difficult decision to maintain their position despite the increasing danger. The intelligence they were gathering could save lives, and their mission required them to accept significant personal risk. They would continue observation as long as possible, even if it meant fighting their way out later. Maria adjusted her position one more time, trying to find the most stable shooting platform her damaged rifle could manage. She had a growing certainty that their surveillance mission was about to become something much more active and dangerous. The radio burst that came through Thompson's headset changed everything. Intelligence had decrypted enemy communications indicating the convoy was preparing for a coordinated attack on 3 coalition outposts simultaneously. The operation was scheduled to begin at sunset, less than 2 hours away. Hundreds of coalition personnel were in immediate danger, and Maria's squad was the only unit in position to potentially disrupt the plan. Maria felt the weight of the situation settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Through her compromised scope, she could see the final preparations taking place below. Personnel were conducting weapons checks, loading ammunition, and receiving what appeared to be final briefings. The efficiency and coordination suggested this was a well-planned operation that had been in development for some time. The squad leader's voice came through their headsets with new orders from command. They were authorized to take whatever action was necessary to disrupt or delay the enemy operation. 3 coalition outposts with over 200 personnel were counting on them to buy time for reinforcements to arrive or for the, bases to prepare their defenses. Jenkins repositioned his machine gun to cover the most likely escape route while Rodriguez prepared his demolition charges. If they were going to act, it would need to be coordinated and decisive. Their small force couldn't defeat the enemy convoy, but they might be able to create enough confusion and casualties to disrupt the timing of the planned attack. Martinez checked his medical supplies once more and identified covered positions where he could treat wounded team members during a firefight. His calm professionalism helped steady everyone's nerves as they prepared for what could be their final mission. The medic's presence reminded them that survival was still possible, even in overwhelming circumstances. Maria studied the command vehicle through her damaged scope, calculating distance, wind speed, and the movement patterns of personnel around the target. The weapon's loose stock made precise aiming difficult, but she had been compensating for the damage throughout the day. Her years of training and natural shooting ability would need to overcome the equipment failure. The enemy commander emerged from his vehicle once again, this time carrying what appeared to be final operational orders. He moved with confidence and authority, clearly unaware that he was being observed. Maria tracked his movement through her scope, noting his patterns and the positions of his security detail. Thompson established one final communication with headquarters, confirming their position and intentions. The radio connection was still poor, but the essential message got through. They would attempt to disrupt the enemy operation, but would need immediate extraction support if they survived the engagement. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the enemy convoy showed clear signs of preparing to move. Engines started, personnel loaded into vehicles, and the formation began shifting into what appeared to be movement order. Maria knew they were running out of time to act. The distance to the command vehicle was approximately 700 meters, well within range for her rifle under normal circumstances. But the damaged stock made long-range precision extremely difficult. She would need to account for the weapon's instability and hope that her experience could compensate for the mechanical problems. Jenkins whispered into his headset, confirming he was ready to provide covering fire. His machine gun would create chaos and confusion, buying precious seconds for Maria to line up her shot and potentially escape afterward. Rodriguez had positioned charges to block the main escape route, forcing the convoy to use more difficult terrain if they pursued. Martinez reminded everyone about rally points and escape procedures. If the engagement went badly, they had predetermined locations where they could regroup and attempt to evade pursuit. The rocky terrain provided multiple hiding spots, but they would need to move quickly once their position was revealed. Maria focused on her breathing, using meditation techniques taught during sniper training to calm her heart rate and steady her aim. The damaged rifle felt unstable in her hands, but she had practiced enough with compromised equipment to know how to compensate. Everything came down to reading the weapon's behavior and adapting to its limitations. The enemy commander stepped into the open once again, consulting with subordinates about final preparations. This would likely be her best opportunity for a clean shot before the convoy began moving. Maria settled into her firing position, using the rocky ground to create the most stable platform possible for her compromised weapon. She calculated the ballistic trajectory, accounting for distance, elevation, wind speed, and the rifle's damaged condition. The shot would require perfect timing and a degree of luck, but it was achievable. More importantly, eliminating the enemy commander could disrupt their coordination enough to delay or derail the planned attack. Thompson checked his equipment one final time and prepared to call in their position for extraction once the engagement began. The helicopter support was standing by, but reaching the pickup zone would require fighting through enemy forces and covering significant ground under fire. Rodriguez armed his demolition charges and prepared to trigger them on command. The explosions would create additional confusion and potentially block pursuit routes, but timing would be critical. Too early, and they would lose the element of surprise. Too late, and the charges might not be effective. Jenkins made final adjustments to his machine gun and identified priority targets for suppressing fire. His role would be to create as much chaos as possible while Maria took her shot, then provide covering fire for their withdrawal. The rocky position gave him good fields of fire, but limited ammunition meant every burst had to count. Maria took one more look through her damaged scope, confirming her target's position and checking for any changes in the tactical situation. The enemy commander was still in the open, seemingly confident in his security arrangements. That confidence was about to be tested. The moment of decision arrived as the convoy prepared to move. Maria had seconds to act before the opportunity disappeared, and hundreds of coalition personnel faced coordinated attack. Her broken rifle felt foreign in her hands, but her training and determination remained intact. Sometimes, she thought, the most important shots were taken with imperfect tools by people who refused to accept defeat. She whispered into her headset, alerting her squad that she was taking the shot. Everything they had trained for, all their experience and courage, would be tested in the next few seconds. Maria's finger touched the trigger as she held her breath, compensating for every variable she could control while accepting those she couldn't. The damaged rifle stock pressed against her shoulder at an awkward angle, but years of training helped her adapt to the weapon's compromised condition. Through the unstable scope, she tracked the enemy commander as he moved between vehicles, coordinating final preparations. The wind shifted slightly, carrying dust across her field of view. Maria paused, waiting for the disturbance to settle. Patience had been drilled into her during sniper training, and rushing the shot would waste their only advantage. The enemy commander stopped beside his vehicle, presenting a clear target for what might be the last time before the convoy departed. She squeezed the trigger with the smooth, controlled pressure that had become second nature. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with unusual violence due to the damaged stock, and the scope momentarily lost focus as the weapon shifted. For a heart-stopping instant, Maria couldn't see the result of her shot through the disturbed optics. When her vision cleared, she saw the enemy commander on the ground, his security detail scrambling for cover. The shot had found its mark despite the rifle's mechanical problems. Around the command vehicle, chaos erupted as personnel tried to understand what had happened and where the attack had come from. Jenkins opened fire immediately with his machine gun, raking the convoy with sustained bursts that created additional confusion and casualties. His steady fire kept enemy personnel pinned down and prevented them from organizing an immediate response. Tracers streaked across the valley as return fire began to pour toward their position. Rodriguez triggered his demolition charges, sending columns of dust and debris into the air as explosions blocked the main access route to their observation post. The carefully placed charges created a barrier that would force any pursuit to take longer, more difficult paths through the rocky terrain. Thompson was already on the radio, calling for immediate extraction while providing coordinates and tactical updates. His calm voice contrasted sharply with the chaos erupting around their position as enemy forces tried to locate and suppress their small squad. Maria worked the bolt of her damaged rifle, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering a new round. The weapon's compromised condition made rapid follow-up shots difficult, but she could still contribute to the firefight. She identified an enemy machine gunner setting up to return fire, and took careful aim despite the rifle's instability. The second shot was more difficult as enemy fire was now directed toward their position. Bullets cracked overhead and splinged off rocks as Maria fought to maintain concentration. The damaged scope wavered as she tried to hold steady aim, but her training helped her compensate for the weapon's unpredictable behavior. Her shot struck the machine gunner before he could fully establish his firing position, eliminating a major threat to their squad. Around the convoy, the confusion continued to grow as leadership struggled to coordinate a response to the unexpected attack. Without their commander, the operation was beginning to fall apart. Martinez called out that he could see enemy personnel attempting to flank their position from the east. The rocky terrain that provided their concealment also offered multiple approach routes for determined attackers. Their defensive position was strong, but they couldn't hold indefinitely against superior numbers. Jenkins shifted his fire to suppress the flanking movement while Rodriguez prepared additional charges to block approach routes. Their ammunition was limited, and every shot had to count if they hoped to survive long enough for extraction. The sound of helicopter rotors in the distance suggested help was coming, but reaching the pickup zone would be challenging. Maria continued engaging targets with her compromised rifle, adapting to its mechanical problems through sheer determination and skill. Each shot required careful compensation for the damaged stock and loose scope, but her training allowed her to remain effective even with faulty equipment. The weapon that had seemed like a liability was becoming a tool of survival. Enemy fire intensified as more personnel recovered from the initial shock and began coordinating their response. Bullets whistled past their position with increasing accuracy as the enemy identified their general location. Maria's squad had achieved their primary objective of disrupting the planned attack, but their own survival was now in serious doubt. Thompson reported that extraction helicopters were en route, but would need the landing zone cleared of enemy forces. The pickup point was several hundred meters away through terrain that was becoming increasingly dangerous as enemy forces spread out to surround their position. Rodriguez began preparing charges to cover their withdrawal, calculating blast patterns and timing to maximize the confusion during their escape attempt. His demolition skills, developed through years of dangerous work, would be crucial to creating the chaos they needed to reach safety. Jenkins maintained suppressing fire while gradually falling back toward the extraction route. His machine gun had been invaluable in creating the initial confusion, but ammunition was running low. Every burst had to be perfectly timed to maintain pressure on the enemy, while conserving rounds for the withdrawal. Martinez kept watch on the squad's condition while preparing for the dangerous movement to the pickup zone. His medical training had taught him to think ahead about potential casualties and treatment options under fire. The rocky terrain that provided cover also presented numerous opportunities for injury during a hasty withdrawal. Maria took one more shot with her damaged rifle before beginning to fall back with the rest of the squad. The weapon had performed beyond expectations despite its mechanical problems, proving that training and determination could overcome equipment failures. Her shot had accomplished the mission objective and potentially saved hundreds of lives. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder as their extraction approached. Enemy fire continued to impact around their position, but the initial organization of the convoy had completely collapsed. Without their commander and caught off guard by the unexpected attack, the planned assault on coalition outposts would be significantly delayed or canceled entirely. As they prepared to move toward the landing zone, Maria reflected on how her broken rifle had somehow become the key to stopping an entire enemy convoy. The weapon that had seemed like a liability had proven that sometimes the most important victories come from making the best of imperfect circumstances and refusing to give up when everything seems to be going wrong. The extraction helicopters appeared over the ridge like mechanical angels, their rotor wash kicking up clouds of dust that provided additional concealment for Maria's squad. The sound of their engines mixed with the continuing crack of enemy rifles and the deeper rumble of explosions as Rodriguez's charges continued. To disrupt pursuit routes, moving toward the landing zone required crossing 200 meters of broken terrain while under fire from an increasingly organized enemy response. Despite the chaos created by their attack, enemy forces were beginning to coordinate pursuit efforts. Maria clutched her damaged rifle and prepared for the most dangerous part of their mission. Thompson led the movement, using his radio equipment to guide the helicopters to the optimal pickup location while calling out enemy positions. His calm voice provided crucial coordination as bullets snapped overhead and ricocheted off the rocky ground around them. The communication specialist had become their lifeline to salvation. Jenkins provided covering fire from successive positions, leapfrogging backward while maintaining pressure on enemy forces. His machine gun had become nearly too hot to handle from sustained firing, but he continued to lay down suppressing bursts that kept enemy heads down during critical movement phases. Rodriguez triggered his final set of charges as they withdrew, sending cascades of rock and debris tumbling down to block pursuit routes. The explosions echoed through the valley like thunder, adding to the confusion and making it difficult for enemy forces to coordinate effectively. His demolition work was buying them precious seconds to reach safety. Martinez stayed close to Maria as they moved, ready to provide medical support if anyone was wounded during the withdrawal. His medical bag bounced against his back as they scrambled over rocks and through narrow passages, but his focus remained on keeping the squad together and functional under extreme stress. Maria's damaged rifle caught on obstacles several times during their movement, the loose stock making it difficult to carry efficiently. but she refused to abandon the weapon that had made their mission successful. The rifle had overcome its mechanical problems through her skill and determination, proving that sometimes imperfect tools in trained hands could accomplish the impossible. Enemy fire followed them as they moved, bullets sparking off rocks and kicking up dust around their feet. The enemy had identified their general escape route and was trying to cut them off before they could reach the helicopters. Time was running out as pursuit forces began flanking movements to intercept them. The first helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust and noise, its crew chief gesturing urgently for them to hurry. Enemy fire was beginning to bracket the landing zone as hostile forces adjusted their aim toward the extraction point. The pilots were taking significant risks to pull them out of an increasingly dangerous situation. Thompson reached the helicopter first and immediately began providing situation updates to the aircrew, while the others continued their approach under fire. His radio work ensured that the extraction pilots understood the tactical situation and could make informed decisions about timing and positioning. Jenkins laid down a final burst of covering fire before sprinting for the aircraft, his machine gun smoking from the sustained engagement. His accurate shooting had been crucial in maintaining suppression throughout their withdrawal, allowing the squad to move when movement seemed impossible. Rodriguez dove into the helicopter cabin just as enemy fire began impacting closer to the aircraft. His demolition charges had created enough chaos and obstruction to slow pursuit, but enemy forces were still working to get clear shots at the extraction site. Martinez helped pull Maria into the helicopter as she struggled with her damaged rifle. The weapon's compromised stock made it awkward to handle during rapid movement, but she was determined not to leave behind the tool that had made their success possible. The rifle represented more than equipment. It symbolized overcoming obstacles through skill and determination. As the helicopter lifted off, Maria could see the enemy convoy spread across the valley below. What had been an organized military formation preparing for coordinated attack was now a scattered collection of vehicles and personnel dealing with casualties and confusion. The planned assault on coalition outposts had been completely disrupted. Thompson established communication with headquarters during their flight back to base, providing detailed intelligence about enemy strength, equipment, and apparent objectives. The information they had gathered during their surveillance would help coalition forces prepare for future operations and understand enemy capabilities in the region. The helicopter crew chief examined Maria's damaged rifle with professional interest, noting how the loose stock and compromised scope had been overcome through careful shooting technique. Her ability to make critical shots with faulty equipment impressed the experienced aircrew members who understood the difficulty of precision shooting under combat conditions. Jenkins cleaned his machine gun during the flight while discussing the engagement with Rodriguez. Their teamwork had been flawless under extreme pressure, with each squad member contributing specialized skills to accomplish a mission that seemed impossible when it began. Trust and training had overcome overwhelming odds. Martinez checked everyone for injuries while monitoring their stress levels after the intense combat. The medic's calm presence helped the squad process what they had accomplished and begin transitioning from combat mode back to normal operational status. His experience with combat trauma made him valuable for more than medical emergencies. Rodriguez reviewed his remaining demolition supplies and calculated how his charges had affected enemy movement during their withdrawal. His precise placement and timing had created maximum disruption with limited resources, proving that technical expertise could multiply the effectiveness of a small force against superior numbers. As their base came into view, Maria reflected on how the morning's routine surveillance mission had become a critical operation that potentially saved hundreds of lives. Her broken rifle, which had seemed like such a serious problem at the beginning of the day, had become the key to stopping an entire enemy convoy from executing planned attacks. The helicopter touched down at base as the sun set behind distant mountains. What had started as a simple observation mission had become a textbook example of how small units could achieve strategic objectives through skill, courage, and the determination to succeed despite equipment failures and overwhelming odds. Maria carried her damaged rifle off the helicopter, knowing that it would be replaced with a functioning weapon for future missions. But the lessons learned during the engagement, about adapting to circumstances and refusing to accept defeat when everything seemed to be going wrong, would stay with her for the rest of her military career and beyond. The debriefing room at Forward Operating Base was filled with senior officers who had gathered to hear first-hand accounts of the engagement that had disrupted a major enemy operation. Maria sat at the conference table with her squad, the damaged rifle placed prominently in front of her as evidence of how they had accomplished their mission despite equipment failure. Colonel Williams, the base commander, opened the session by reading preliminary intelligence reports that confirmed the enemy convoy had been preparing for coordinated attacks on 3 coalition outposts. The disruption caused by Maria's squad had prevented casualties that could have numbered in the hundreds, making their small unit action strategically significant far beyond its size. Thompson provided detailed intelligence about enemy strength, equipment, and organization observed during their surveillance. His careful notes and radio communications had captured crucial information that would help coalition forces understand enemy capabilities and planning methods. The intelligence value of their mission extended far beyond the immediate tactical success. Jenkins described the weapons and defensive positions observed in the enemy convoy, providing details that would help future operations plan appropriate countermeasures. His experience with heavy weapons allowed him to identify equipment and capabilities that other observers might have missed. Every detail would contribute to saving lives in future engagements. Rodriguez explained how his demolition charges had been placed to maximize disruption during their withdrawal, sharing techniques that other units could use in similar situations. His expertise in explosives had provided crucial time for extraction while demonstrating how small amounts of properly placed charges could achieve significant tactical effects. Martinez discussed the medical aspects of operating under extreme stress and the importance of maintaining squad cohesion during high-pressure situations. His observations about combat psychology would contribute to training programs designed to help soldiers perform effectively when facing overwhelming odds. Maria described how she had adapted to her rifle's mechanical problems, explaining the techniques used to compensate for damaged equipment while maintaining accuracy at long range. Her account would become part of marksmanship training programs, showing how skilled soldiers could overcome equipment failures through knowledge and determination. The damaged rifle itself became a centerpiece of discussion as weapons specialists examined how Maria had managed precision shooting with a compromised weapon. Her ability to make critical shots despite the loose stock and unstable scope impressed experienced military personnel who understood the difficulty of maintaining accuracy with faulty equipment. Colonel Williams announced that preliminary damage assessment indicated the enemy convoy had suffered significant casualties and complete mission failure. The coordinated attack on coalition outposts had been canceled, and enemy forces in the region had been forced to completely restructure their operational plans. A 5-person squad had achieved strategic effects normally associated with much larger operations. Intelligence officers reported that intercepted enemy communication showed complete confusion and loss of command structure following the death of their senior commander. Maria's shot with her damaged rifle had eliminated the key leader, whose planning and coordination had made the complex operation possible. Without his leadership, the entire enemy network in the region was struggling to reorganize. The squadron's actions were being recommended for unit citations and individual decorations, recognizing their courage under fire and successful completion of a mission that had evolved far beyond its original scope. Their willingness to engage overwhelming enemy forces despite equipment problems had exemplified the highest traditions of military service. Maria was specifically commended for her shooting ability and leadership under pressure, with recommendations for advanced marksmanship instructor certification and promotion consideration. Her performance with damaged equipment had demonstrated skills that should be shared with other soldiers facing similar challenges. The broken rifle had become a symbol of overcoming obstacles through training and determination. The weapons specialist who examined her rifle confirmed that the stock damage should have made precision shooting nearly impossible at the ranges involved in her engagement. Her ability to compensate for mechanical problems while under combat stress represented exceptional marksmanship, skills that deserved recognition and study by training specialists. During the final phase of debriefing, each squad member was asked to identify lessons learned that could benefit future operations. Their responses would be incorporated into training programs and tactical manuals, ensuring that their experiences would help other soldiers face similar challenges with greater preparation and confidence. Thompson emphasized the importance of maintaining communications under difficult conditions and the value of persistence when equipment wasn't functioning perfectly. His ability to coordinate extraction despite poor radio conditions had been crucial to their survival and successful mission completion. Jenkins stressed the psychological effects of steady, accurate supporting fire and maintaining unit cohesion during withdrawal under pressure. His machine gun work had provided the foundation that allowed other squad members to function effectively during the most dangerous phase of their mission. Rodriguez highlighted how careful preparation and technical expertise could multiply the effectiveness of limited resources when properly applied. His demolition work had achieved maximum disruption with minimal materials, proving that knowledge and skill could overcome resource limitations. Martinez discussed the importance of staying calm under extreme stress and how medical training provided perspective that helped maintain unit effectiveness. His steady presence had contributed to squad cohesion throughout the engagement, demonstrating that medics provided value far beyond treating injuries. Maria spoke about the importance of adapting to circumstances rather than being defeated by equipment problems or unexpected situations. Her damaged rifle had taught her that training and determination could overcome mechanical failures when giving up wasn't an option. Sometimes the most important victories came from refusing to accept defeat when everything seemed to be going wrong. The debriefing concluded with Colonel Williams presenting Maria with a replacement rifle and announcing that her damaged weapon would be displayed in the base museum as an example of how individual soldiers could achieve extraordinary results through skill and courage. The broken rifle had stopped an entire enemy convoy and saved hundreds of lives. As she left the debriefing room, Maria reflected on how a routine surveillance mission had become the most important engagement of her military career. Her broken rifle had taught her that success wasn't about having perfect equipment, but about having the training, courage, and determination to do what was necessary when it mattered most. The lesson would stay with her long after her military service ended, a reminder that the most significant achievements often came from overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles through skill, teamwork, and the refusal to give up when others might have accepted defeat.